The chilly November air crept through the streets of suburban Chicago, carrying the scent of dry maple leaves and roasting pumpkin pie. For Sarah, a high school English teacher, that chill seemed to penetrate deeper, carrying with it an invisible anxiety. She squeezed her husband David's hand as he skillfully navigated their minivan through the lit-up streets. In the back seat, their eldest daughter, Emily, clutched a carefully wrapped gift, while their youngest son, Josh, chattered endlessly about the turkey and football games he was about to watch. This year, Thanksgiving arrived under a completely different set of circumstances. David's small architecture firm was struggling after losing a major client. Projects were stalled, payments were delayed, and the family's main source of income had become more precarious than ever. Sarah had taken on a few extra evening tutoring classes to compensate, but it was just a drop in the bucket. "We agreed, right? Just small, meaningful gifts," Sarah whispered to her husband, as if to reassure herself. Mom made it clear in the family group chat. "This year we're focusing on togetherness." David nodded, but Sarah could see the tension in his jaw. "I know. I just hope everything goes smoothly." The spacious two-story house belonging to Sarah's parents, Richard and Helen, was ablaze with lights. From a distance, she could already hear the cheerful din of conversation. As their family parked, her younger sister, Jessica, and her husband, Mike, pulled into the driveway in a gleaming luxury SUV. Jessica emerged in an expensive cashmere dress, followed by her two sons, their faces buried in the latest tablets. Mike, a man with an air of importance, opened the trunk and began unloading huge, lavishly wrapped gift boxes. Sarah's heart sank. The still warm homemade pumpkin pie and the fine bottle of wine in her hands suddenly felt impossibly heavy. Helen rushed out to greet Jessica's family. "Oh, Jessica, my dear. Come in, come in. Why buy so many gifts? It's too much." Her voice was radiant, but her hands eagerly accepted the presents. When Sarah and her family walked in, Helen merely glanced over. "Oh, Sarah, you're here. Come on in. Just put the pie and wine on the kitchen counter." Sarah forced a smile, placing her offering in a corner, next to the brand-new top-of-the-line espresso machine that Mike and Jessica had just brought. Emily timidly placed her hand-drawn card for her grandparents next to her mother's pie. The Thanksgiving dinner proceeded in an atmosphere that would seem warm to an outsider. But Sarah, with her insider sensitivity, could feel the undercurrents. Her father, Richard, constantly asked Mike about his business and new investment deals. Her mother endlessly praised Jessica's gift-giving taste, gushing over a designer handbag she'd received. "This espresso machine is fantastic," Richard remarked after trying a cup. "That's my girl." Jessica smiled smugly, glancing at Sarah. "You and Dad have worked hard your whole lives. You deserve to enjoy things now. Mike says money is no object when it comes to your happiness." Sarah just ate in silence, trying to ignore the stinging sensation in her chest. David gently squeezed her hand under the table, a quiet comfort. After dinner came the gift exchange. Emily and Josh eagerly presented their small, personally chosen gifts to their grandparents. Helen smiled, handing them boxes containing clothes and a few books. But immediately after, Jessica and Mike called the children over. "Come here, you two. Uncle Mike and Aunt Jessica have something for you." They were the latest handheld gaming consoles. Josh, with the innocence of a child, couldn't hide his awe and a touch of envy. Emily was more perceptive. She glanced quickly at her two cousins, who were already shouting with joy. She bit her lip, offered a polite thank you, and quietly set her gift aside. Sarah watched it all. Her heart felt like it was in a vice. But the breaking point came when she walked into the kitchen for a glass of water and overheard her mother's phone conversation with a distant aunt. "Oh, you know, sis," Helen's voice was laced with pity. "Sarah's family is having a hard time this year. Her husband's business isn't doing so well. They came for Thanksgiving with such meager gifts, it was just pitiful to see." Well, they meant well, I suppose, but compared to Jessica's family, it's a world of difference. It's true what they say, some daughters just have better luck. Every word was a needle piercing Sarah's heart. A wave of shame, resentment, and anger rose in her throat. She no longer felt sorry for her situation. She felt insulted. So in her mother's eyes, all of her and David's hard work, the thoughtful gifts they had chosen, were just meager and pitiful. She turned and walked briskly back to the living room. "David, we're leaving." David was surprised, but one look at his wife's tear-filled eyes told him everything. He nodded without question. Sarah led her children to the door. "Emily, Josh, say goodbye to Grandma and Grandpa. We're going home." Helen hastily ended her call. "What's this? Why are you leaving so early? We were about to watch a movie." "We have something to do." Sarah's voice was cold and distant. She couldn't look her mother in the eye. "The kids are tired too." "What could you possibly have to do at this hour?" Helen grumbled. "It's a holiday. You should be staying with family." Sarah didn't answer. She helped her children put on their coats and walked out to the car with David. Emily followed her mother silently. As she passed the gift table, she quietly retrieved her hand-drawn card from the corner and stuffed it back into her coat pocket. That small act was like a final twist of the knife in Sarah's bleeding heart. The family drove away, leaving Sarah's parents in stunned silence and Jessica with a knowing smirk. The drive home on Thanksgiving night felt long and cold. The November wind whipped against her face, chilling her to the bone, but it was nothing compared to the cold that was seizing her soul. As they neared home, Josh, leaning his head against the car window, asked with childlike innocence, "Mom, are we poor?" Her son's question was a wake-up call, shaking Sarah from the stupor of years of quiet submission. She didn't cry. Her tears seemed to have frozen along with the last bit of warmth she felt for her family. Only one thought dominated her mind. This has to end. Tonight. Their small house was silent. After putting the children to bed, David went to his study, probably to give his wife some space. Sarah couldn't sleep. The feeling of being insulted and the pent-up resentment of so many years churned inside her like a storm. She wasn't one to hold grudges or count every penny, but tonight's events had crossed every line. This wasn't just about gifts or money. It was about a lack of respect. It was about the unfair treatment that had become a system, a tradition in which she was always the weaker party, always the one who had to endure and sacrifice. She shot up from the couch and walked into her small home office. The dim blue light from her laptop screen illuminated her determined face. She opened a new Excel file, her fingers flying across the keyboard. She named the file Reclaim. This was not just a financial audit. It was a complete audit of the time, energy, and self-respect she had allowed others to erode over the years. In the first row she typed, "Unpaid loans." The memory flooded back. 5 years ago Jessica had called her sobbing. "Sis, I'm just $5,000 short for the down payment on a new car. Mike's out of town and won't be back in time. Can you lend it to me for a few days? I'll pay you back as soon as he's home." Sarah, without hesitation, had transferred the money immediately. Jessica's few days stretched into 5 years. The car was old now, but the debt was never mentioned again. In fact, Sarah remembered Jessica bragging about buying a designer handbag just 2 weeks later. She entered $5,000 into the spreadsheet. Next, default family expenses. Family phone plan. Her parents and Jessica were all on her family plan. Helen's reasoning was, "It's just more convenient to have one bill, dear. Your father and I are getting older. We don't understand all this stuff." That convenience had been costing her family over $120 every month for the past 4 years. Cable and internet. Her parents had the premium package, with every sports and movie channel. And who paid for it? Sarah. The monthly bill was $150, and it had been going on for 6 years. She did the math. The result stunned her. Online subscriptions. Her Netflix and Amazon Prime accounts were used freely by her entire extended family. The third column, the one that hurt Sarah the most. Lost time and opportunities. Free babysitting. Jessica and Mike had a nanny, but whenever the nanny took time off, Sarah became the default babysitter. "Can the boys come play with Emily and Josh for a bit? I'll pick them up this afternoon." Playing meant Sarah had to feed, supervise, and clean up after 4 children. Her precious weekends, which she could have used to rest or tutor for extra income, were co-opted. Postponed dreams. With the money she had invested in her extended family, she and David could have done so much. A trip to Disney World for the kids. Gymnastics lessons for Emily. The professional development course Sarah had always dreamed of taking. Sarah stared at the grand total at the bottom of the spreadsheet. It was an astonishing number. It was enough to significantly change the quality of life for her small family. Enough for her daughter to pursue her passion. Enough for her husband to have fewer sleepless nights filled with worry. Enough so that her son would never have to ask that heartbreaking question again. What am I buying with all of this? She asked herself. The answer was brutal. She was buying their convenience, their thoughtlessness. She was paying to play the role of the responsible, capable daughter. A role that had held her back, making her feel perpetually indebted. Her resolve was as cold as ice. Sarah began to act. First, she logged into her telecom provider's website. With a few clicks, she separated her parents' and Jessica's lines from her plan. Starting next month, they would have to register and pay for their own. Next, she downgraded her parents' cable package to the basic plan. The premium sports and movie channels vanished. Finally, she changed the passwords on all her online accounts. She opened the family group chat. After a moment of hesitation, she typed a short, polite but firm message. To everyone. From now on, to be fair and to ensure everyone shares the responsibility, I propose that we split the costs for all future family gatherings, Thanksgiving, Christmas, etc. I will create a list and budget beforehand for everyone to contribute. She hit send. Her heart pounded. She knew a storm was coming. Just then the office door creaked open. David walked in with a hot cup of tea. He had seen everything. He looked at the laptop screen, at the spreadsheet named Reclaim. He wasn't surprised, only a deep sadness and empathy in his eyes. I've always wanted to tell you, David's voice was low. But I was afraid you'd be hurt, that you'd think I was being stingy with your family. I'm sorry I stayed silent for so long. Sarah shook her head, the tears finally breaking free. It's not your fault. It's mine. I've been too weak. David wrapped his arms around his wife. There's going to be a storm, you know. Sarah nodded in his embrace. I know. But I can't let them keep doing this. Did you see Emily's face tonight? When she quietly put her card away. In that moment I knew I had to change. For our children. They sat together in silence, the steam from the tea warming the air. Outside the night was fading. A new day was dawning. A day of battles Sarah knew she could not avoid. But this time she was not alone. And she was no longer afraid. The sun was barely up when Sarah's phone began to buzz insistently. The first call was from her mother. Sarah took a deep breath and answered. Sarah, what have you done? Helen's voice shrieked through the phone, full of anger and confusion. Why can't your father watch the sports channel? And my phone just got a text saying I need to sign up for a new plan. Sarah kept her voice as calm as possible. I've separated the phone lines from my plan, Mom. From now on, everyone will pay their own bills. I also changed your cable package to the basic one. It's still enough for you and Dad to watch the news. The basic package? Who gave you permission to do that? We've had the same plan for years. And I've been paying for it for years, Mom. We're in a difficult financial situation right now, and I can't keep carrying those expenses. If you and Dad and Jessica want premium services, you can sign up for them yourselves. Sarah said it all in one breath, clearly and distinctly. There was a moment of silence on the other end, then Helen hissed. Fine. You're so clever now, counting pennies with your own parents. We'll see about this. She hung up abruptly. Before Sarah could put her phone down, a flood of texts from Jessica arrived. What are you doing in the group chat? Why are you suddenly talking about splitting costs? No one's ever had a problem before. If you're having money trouble, just say so, I can help. Why do you have to make everything so complicated? Mom and Dad just called me, crying their eyes out. You need to take a good look at yourself. Who treats their parents like that? Sarah read each message but didn't reply. She knew any explanation now would only add fuel to the fire. The real storm hit around 10 in the morning. A car screeched to a halt in front of Sarah's house. Her mother and father got out, their faces grim. With them was an older man, her Uncle Bob, a respected figure in the extended family. An unannounced family meeting. David opened the door, trying to maintain a polite demeanor. Hi, Uncle Bob. Hi, Mom, Dad. Please come in. Helen ignored him and marched straight into the living room. Uncle Bob gave a perfunctory nod. Richard's face was like thunder. Sit down, Uncle Bob commanded in an authoritative voice, pointing to the sofa opposite him. Sarah, David, sit down. I want to talk to you. Sarah and David exchanged a look. then calmly sat down. Uncle Bob cleared his throat and began his familiar speech. Family is about loving and supporting one another. I hear from your mother that you two have been having some difficulties lately, and it's made you start counting pennies and hurting your parents' feelings. Is that right? Sarah looked her uncle straight in the eye and spoke clearly. Uncle Bob, we have no intention of being calculating or disrespectful to our parents. We are simply trying to live within our means and re-establish some things to be more fair. Fair? Helen interjected, her voice dripping with sarcasm. We raised you, sent you to college, and now you want to talk about being fair with us? Do you have any idea how much your text message hurt your sister? She said it made her feel like you were accusing her of taking advantage of you. I didn't accuse anyone of anything, Sarah responded patiently. I only suggested a necessary level of fairness to maintain long-term family harmony. Fairness, my foot. Richard finally spoke up, slamming his hand on the table. She canceled my sports channels. My friends came over, and I couldn't even put the game on for them. I was so embarrassed. The conversation was devolving into a dead end of accusations and bruised egos. Sarah knew that logic couldn't win against emotion. It was time for evidence. Excuse me, Sarah said, standing up and walking to her office. She returned with a neatly clipped folder, the reclaim file she had prepared the night before. She placed it on the coffee table in front of her uncle and parents. What's this? Uncle Bob frowned. Sarah calmly opened it page by page. Uncle Bob, Mom, Dad, this isn't to brag or to demand repayment. This is so you can better understand what's been happening over the past several years. She pointed to the bank statement showing the transfer to Jessica 5 years ago. This is the $5,000 I lent Jessica for her car. I never asked for it back, and I have no intention of doing so. I just want to point out that when we've needed help, we've never received similar support. She turned to the next page, a summary of the telecommunications and cable bills. This is the total amount I've paid for you and Jessica over the years. It's equivalent to the cost of 10 years of gymnastics lessons for Emily. The last page was a detailed log of the weekend she had spent babysitting for Jessica, along with a printout of local babysitting rates. And this is my time. Time I could have spent with my family, on my work, or simply resting. The air in the living room grew thick. Uncle Bob picked up the file, his experienced eyes scanning the figures. His expression changed from surprise to shock. Richard fell silent, staring at the numbers as if he couldn't believe them. Helen stammered. This? Are you writing all this down to accuse us? Sarah shook her head, her voice softening but still firm. I'm not accusing anyone. I just don't want to be silent anymore. I'm not asking for anything back. I just want to reset things going forward. We need to live our own lives to provide for our children's future. I'm still your daughter, but I'm also a wife and a mother. I can no longer sacrifice my own small family to please everyone else. David placed a hand on his wife's shoulder, a strong gesture of support. Uncle Bob put the file down on the table. He was quiet for a long time, then he turned to Sarah's parents. You two need to think about this. The girl has a point. Sometimes we take our children's sacrifices for granted. With that he stood up. Well, this is your family's business. You sort it out. I'm leaving. Sarah's parents were stunned. The intervention had failed. They had come as righteous accusers but had ended up as the ones in the wrong. They stood up and left in silence without another word. That evening the family group chat was eerily quiet. But Sarah's phone lit up with a message from a cousin. Hey Sarah, I support you. You did the right thing. I felt so exhausted so many times but never dared to speak up. You spoke for a lot of us. Sarah smiled. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Her relationship with her parents and sister might never be the same. But she had no regrets. For the first time in years she felt like she was living for herself. The storm might still be raging outside, but inside her small home the sky was clear. The direct confrontation was over, but the Cold War had just begun. Sarah had anticipated this. In many families, direct defiance is often seen as ungrateful or selfish. And her mother, Helen, was a master at using public opinion and emotional manipulation to apply pressure. She began her campaign subtly. At gatherings with friends she would sigh dramatically. I'm just so unlucky. You raise a daughter, hoping she'll be your emotional support. And instead, she counts every penny with you. I guess her husband's business troubles have made her bitter and difficult. The rumors spread like wildfire. An aunt called Sarah, her voice full of concern. Sarah dear, are you and David having a hard time? Hang in there, things will get better. But don't let it make you upset your parents. They're getting old. Jessica didn't stay quiet either. She complained to their mutual friends. Sarah has changed so much. She's become so materialistic, counting every little thing. She was never like this before. I guess the financial pressure is making her lash out and making her own family miserable. Every rumor that reached Sarah felt like a small cut. She was angry and wanted to scream the truth from the rooftops. But David held her back. Don't, he said. The more you try to explain, the more they'll think you're being defensive. The best thing to do is to stay quiet and live your life well. Time will tell the true story. Sarah listened to her husband. She ignored the probing phone calls and the pitying looks. She focused on her work and her small family. Her biggest support came from an unexpected place: her in-laws. One evening, her mother-in-law called. She didn't beat around the bush. Sarah, I've heard some unpleasant things being said about you. I don't believe a word of it. We know you're a kind and considerate person. If you and David need anything, please don't hesitate to ask. Her mother-in-law's words were like a warm balm on her wounded soul. Sarah realized she didn't need everyone's approval. The understanding of those who truly loved her was enough. However, the battle didn't stay confined to the world of adults. It began to seep into the innocent world of the children. One day, Emily came home from a cousin's birthday party looking downcast. She didn't say anything, just went straight to her room. That night, when Sarah went in to say goodnight, she found her daughter crying softly. Emily, what's wrong? Why are you crying? Sarah asked worriedly. Emily hesitated for a moment before speaking, her voice choked with tears. At the party, Grandma told me. She said that you don't love her anymore. And that's why you won't help her pay the bills. Sarah's heart stopped. She couldn't believe her own mother would say such a thing to a 10-year-old child. A surge of anger rose within her, but looking at her daughter's innocent, confused eyes, she held it back. This was not the time for anger. This was the time to be strong and wise to protect her child. Sarah pulled Emily into her arms, stroking her small, trembling back. Emily, listen to me. I love Grandma very much. I love her so much. But sometimes adults have adult problems. What kind of problems? Emily looked up and asked. Sarah thought for a moment, trying to find the simplest words. It's like in your classroom. Your teacher has rules to make sure everyone can learn happily together, right? Like you're not supposed to take your friends' things without asking. Emily nodded. Well, it's the same in a family. Sometimes adults need to set up rules or boundaries so that everyone respects each other and doesn't hurt each other. What I did wasn't because I stopped loving Grandma. It was me setting a boundary to protect our little family so that I can take better care of you and Josh. Emily still seemed a bit confused, but she had stopped crying. Sarah knew her daughter was smart and sensitive. She would understand, maybe not immediately, but eventually. Loving someone doesn't mean you have to agree with everything they do or let them treat you unfairly, honey. True love has to go hand in hand with respect. Remember that. Emily nodded, burying her face in her mother's embrace. Sarah held her daughter tight, silently vowing that she would never let anyone, not even her own family, hurt her children again. She had drawn a line in the sand, and she would use all her strength to defend it. This fight wasn't just for herself. It was for her children's future and their self-respect. As time passed, the violent waves of the initial conflict subsided, giving way to the gentle ripples of a new reality. The relationship between Sarah and her family entered a period of Cold War. There were no more fiery arguments, but the old warmth was gone too. Phone calls became less frequent and were limited to necessary topics. The first major change came on the 4th of July. In previous years, the family would gather at Richard and Helen's, and Sarah would be the default organizer, handling everything from menu planning and grocery shopping to cooking and cleaning. But this year she decided to wait. A week before the holiday, her father called. His voice was hesitant, a stark contrast to his usual commanding tone. Sarah, next week is the 4th of July. What? What are your plans? It was the first time he had ever asked for her input instead of just assuming. Sarah realized this was her chance to establish a new order. Yes, Dad, I know. I was thinking we could just do a simple barbecue this year. Each family can bring a dish. We'll bring the ribs and a salad. Jessica's family can bring drinks and dessert. You and Mom can prepare the side dishes. What do you think? Her father was silent for a moment. Yeah, that sounds good. I'll talk to your mother and sister. The conversation was brief, but for Sarah it was a huge victory. She was no longer shouldering the entire burden. The responsibility had been shared. The holiday itself was a bit awkward. Jessica brought dessert, placed it on the table, and barely spoke to Sarah. Helen maintained a cool demeanor, but there were no more criticisms or commands. The highlight of the gathering was when Richard, after tasting David's ribs, unexpectedly said, "David, these ribs are delicious. The seasoning is perfect, and the meat is so tender." David was a little surprised, then smiled and thanked his father-in-law. It was a small compliment, but it broke the icy silence and showed a shift, however slight, in Richard's thinking. Sarah knew this wasn't a reconciliation, but it was a start. She no longer needed their approval. She just needed their respect for her boundaries. The Reclaim spreadsheet on Sarah's computer had been replaced by a new file named Future Investments. The money saved from cutting unnecessary expenses was channeled into more meaningful things. Family Vacation Fund. They had booked flights and a hotel for a trip to California in the summer. The trip they had been dreaming of for 3 years. Education Fund. Emily had started taking gymnastics lessons every weekend. She showed real talent and was having a blast. Sarah had also enrolled in a professional development course, an important step in her career. Emergency Fund. David no longer frowned whenever an unexpected expense came up. His firm was also slowly getting back on its feet. Sarah's actions also had an unexpected ripple effect. Her cousin, the one who had texted her in support, had also had a frank conversation with her parents about financial contributions. A few of Sarah's friends, after hearing her story, also began to reevaluate their own family relationships and set healthier boundaries. She realized that her actions had not only liberated herself, but had also given courage to other women in similar situations. One beautiful Sunday afternoon, about 6 months after that fateful Thanksgiving night, as Sarah was tending to her small garden with her children, her phone buzzed with a text message. It was from her mother. "Are you free this weekend? I'd like to come over and see the kids. I'll call first." Sarah read the last line again and again. "I'll call first." A simple sentence, but it held a world of change. It was an acknowledgement of her private space. It was respect. She smiled, a truly light and peaceful smile. She looked at her 2 children playing on the lawn, at her husband smiling at her from the porch. This little house, in all its simplicity, was her kingdom. A kingdom built on a foundation of love, respect, and clear boundaries. That night, after the children were asleep, Sarah sat at her desk and wrote the final entry in her journal. They often say that family is priceless. But perhaps true love is not blind sacrifice, not enduring until you're exhausted. True love is living a responsible life, building a strong family so that you can truly be a support for your loved ones when they need it, not just resentful submission. Love without boundaries is not love. It's destruction. True love is when everyone has the space to be themselves, to stand on their own 2 feet. I can't change my family, but I can change how I react to them. I can't stop them from asking, but I can stop giving what was never appreciated. Today, for the first time in years, I feel a complete sense of peace. A peace that wasn't given to me, but one that I fought to win for myself.